Hello and welcome to the Meeting Gold podcast. My name is Samuel Mealy, your host here. As always, we have a great guest today, Steve. Steve, can you give a little intro to the audience today? Give them what you do for a living, where you grew up, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. I
Of course.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
So my name's Steve Dainard. I am a mortgage broker in the Niagara region here with Mortgage Architects. I've been in this space for about 8 years now. Grew up in Toronto, born and raised, and we moved to Niagara about 11 years ago. Absolutely love it, and we're going to live out our lives here. It's a fantastic community, and we're super stoked to be a part of it.
That's awesome. You know, I actually talk a lot with like real estate agents, especially about the Niagara area, and they're always like, you know what, this isn't a first home buy location, but it's like your third or fourth or fifth, and it's your final. You know.
Well, so I think it's interesting too. I think originally when we first came to Niagara, there was a lot of really great value, and then in 2017 we went through a bit of a market correction, and then so we saw prices, getting back to a more normal price level. And what happened there is that, we started to see a lot of people coming through from Toronto trying to get deals still,
Yes.
And then, so I think that has normalized itself a little bit now, because I think that the market's more, reasonably priced. But yeah, it's an awesome place to be.
That's wonderful. So let's dive in a little bit to your background. We won't stick on that topic, and then we'll kind of get into what you're doing now, how you built the business that you're doing. So give us a little background. So you lived in Toronto for how long?
Born and raised. So
wow.
I worked there for 30 years, and I retired when I was 49.
And sorry, what were you doing in Toronto?
I was a manager with the Toronto Transit Commission.
Wow. Okay.
And had a great job with it, but I was commuting, back and forth from Niagara to Toronto for about 2.5 years, and it's a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so we had an option to retire with full pension, regardless of age. So I got out when I was 49, but I knew that was coming. And so I thought, what am I going to do? And so I thought, financial planner, because I work with numbers. Right?
Yep.
And I fell into the Mortgage Professionals Canada website, and I went, oh, mortgage agent. Oh, yeah, we used a mortgage agent for our first mortgage. That sounds kind of cool. And literally everything happens for a reason. I swear it seems like within that week, somebody who worked for me, we were out for dinner. His wife was there. She's a mortgage broker.
No way.
We got talking.
No way.
I'm just like, what? Like I was just looking at the website. What do you got to do? Yada, yada, yada. Anyways, I said to her, sign me up. What do I got to do? So I got my certification, got my professional designation the whole year that I was still working. Yeah. And then in 2014, January, retired and entered into the mortgage space from there.
Wow. You know what? I got to be honest with you, Steve. It shows on like social media and stuff like that you didn't do this job for the money. It's very, very clear. And that was really important to you. So kind of dive into like, what are some things you value in the business that you're doing right now? How you grew it? Like, what are those values there that you hold to your clients, relationships, people who aren't clients, friends, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
And so I think that it's important, whenever you are a professional in a space where you can get paid really well, I think if you try to lead with your transactional in nature, or you're in it for the money only, that becomes very transparent, and people know that you're a salesperson. Yep. And so that kind of dilutes your authenticity, okay?
Right.
And so I think if you really focus more on trying to be able to provide value and being a resource for people, good or bad, sometimes you can help them out, sometimes you can't.
Yep.
But if you're straight up and you're calling a spade, and you're providing, useful information for them to maybe get them into a better space, I think people appreciate it. They might not want to deal with it, but I think if they look back on it, they'll appreciate, that insight. And so from that, by doing and providing value and service, the money follows.
Yes.
But that's not your focus. So I think that's
very
a really
clear. Yeah.
distinction. Do you know what I mean?
You make it very clear, because for anybody back up, Steve and I met kind of through social media. Right. You actually were supporting me, kind of ghosting, supporting me to start. And then I was like, who's this Steve guy? He seems like a nice guy. Like, he's really liking all my stuff and that kind of thing. And so I was like, hey, why not have him on? And it was very clear to me that you don't do it for the money, and that you actually just enjoy it. Like, you genuinely enjoy it. So, a lot of people are trapped in jobs that they don't enjoy. Right. We don't have to dive into the 30 years you had it in Toronto or anything like that. But what was it like getting into something that you enjoy? What were the steps you took? And kind of what would you say to somebody that's trapped, not necessarily trapped, but scared
feeling
to,
like they want to change.
Venture, you know?
So first of all, I never really lead my life with the shoulda, coulda, woulda mentality.
Interesting.
Sure, you think, you know what, maybe, I should have done this. But I think the more important takeaway from something like that is whatever you've done up to today has made you who you are. And there are skill set and ideally transferable skills that you can take from one space to the other.
100%.
So for example, my, prior background, I work with people, I work with numbers, I work negotiating, contracts. So I found that moving into the mortgage broker space was really easy. Sure, I maybe had to have learned legislative compliance issues, et cetera, to make sure that I was competent from that capacity. You have to learn product, but the core foundation on who you are as an individual, how you treat people, your values, your morals, not wanting to compromise yourself. And it's interesting too, it wasn't that long ago where a lot of mortgage professionals were kind of one level up from a used car salesperson mentality.
Right.
There was not a lot of credibility in the space, Well, the industry's really done a lot of work trying to be able to flip that around.
That's fantastic.
That we are professionals and we're not compromising on falsifying documents and all that. So nothing could be further from the truth. I'm not saying there aren't people still out there that are like that.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not something we're going to do. We had talked a little bit before we got on camera here that, your reputation in any market is everything.
100%.
And once you compromise yourself, what that says is that you're open to being compromised again in the future. And people might not know that because they said, oh, you got to go to Steve because he'll compromise, your file. They might not know that. But I think that comes through as a result of how you represent yourself.
Yep. And I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but really what I was catching on was, reputation's everything, which is something we hear very often. Right. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know if they have like a hard-headed mentality or if they're not, somebody might, what I'm getting at is somebody might think that they're open and honest but they don't listen to anybody else. They just focus on what they're doing, focus on themselves and say, I know what I'm doing. You're not listening. Here's what you have to do type of thing. So this is a tricky question, but to somebody like that, maybe can you give us how would you test yourself in seeing if you're the true you, if you're really grasping what you could truly be in business, let's say?
It's a great question. So I think that if you're in a space and you need to really get a grasp on what other people are thinking, saying, doing, you need to ask them. And you need to be able to step back and say, I may perceive that it's this way because that's my belief system, my observation, and my mental framework.
Your paradigm.
That's how I'm looking at things.
Yep.
But then if I said to you, hey, Sam, what's important to you in this space? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you give me, feedback and I'm like, holy crap, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
So what that's doing is that's changing your paradigm. So I think it's really important for you to be able to have conversations with people and seek to understand. Speak less. Let your audience speak to you so you can truly understand and say, okay, I think I got that wrong. Yeah. I thought it was this way, but it wasn't. And so I think that's very powerful. And you need to make sure you're doing those check-ins regularly. You never know it all. You never have all the information. You never have all the knowledge, right? Things change, right? So I think it's super important to be able to have those conversations regularly.
That's so true. I mean, you answered. I didn't know what I was expecting in that answer, but it was perfect from what I was hearing. Honestly, asking questions is the best way to show you care. Right? To show that you want the best for somebody.
You're wanting to learn. You're wanting to expand your knowledge base, right?
Yeah. It's crucial. And I think that's why I love your answer so much is because a lot of people forget about that. A lot of people don't do checkups, call them checkups. Mm-hmm. I got to work on that more, especially is getting to know your employees, checking up. Hey, what do you feel like? Do you feel this deadline is too short? Do you feel that you need a little bit more time? That kind of thing. Or even with clients, hey, be honest with me. Did you really like this video? Or did you really like the experience that we had? You know what I mean? Because to be honest with you, you learn so much so quickly.
100%.
Right?
And you know, and I think it's interesting too that if you also have conversations with people that are in different industries, so I think there is a bit of there's a bit of a group think that happens because once you, and I found this in the mortgage broker space, once you dive in, you look to other people you perceive are successful in the industry, and then you look at the ways that maybe that they are approaching their audiences or the way they're advertising, and you think that that's what everyone does. That's not always necessarily true. That might not resonate with you as an individual. And I'll give you an example. You know, our industry is very rate driven and very rate sensitive. And that's important. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of potential loopholes when it comes to accessing bargain basement rates. There may be constraints that happen as a result of that product you're getting into that may be an issue for you in the future. Right. And that's where it's going to cost you the money. Okay. So I learned very early that I don't lead with price.
Interesting.
We're out there to get our clients the best deal. Do not get me wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that if you as an individual, if your goals are A, B, C, D, E, and we align you with a product that doesn't align with your short and long-term goals, I'm doing myself a disservice. I'm being more transactional in nature because all I want to do is land the contract today.
Get that sale.
And then what's going to happen is that people are going to get disillusioned, okay? Did you know that statistically, almost 70% of people that get into a 5-year term, okay, have a need to break that mortgage contract about 3.5 years.
Wow.
So if you are 3.5, and that's relocating, need to refinance, need a larger home, marital change, you know, workforce relocation, whatever that looks like.
3.5 years.
3.5 years. So if I'm putting a client into a 5-year product, and I know statistically there's a really good chance that they're going to need to break that at about 3.9 years, okay? I want to make sure the product that I put you in does not have any major constraints, so financially it's going to cost you big bucks to get out of that at 3.9 years.
Right.
Now you may say to me, Steve, you know what? I'm good for 5 years. Okay, but I'm going to explain to the client, listen, I know you say that now, but statistically, this is the case, and here's what I think is a better fit. This is your financial future. You can make the judgment call, but it's my job to give you the information to say you might want to consider this, and here's why. If you don't take that advice, that's fine. But at least I've done my job in trying to position you so you fully understand that.
And it goes back to making sure that the client understands the situation that they're in. You know, it's like the real skill in jobs like that. So any advice jobs, financial advisor, mortgage agent, those kind of things, to be able to explain and dummy down what the situation is, what it could look like, what it could turn into, takes the most skill, honestly. Well, because it's so hard, right? It's like, you know, some people are like, well, to their customer, well, how do you not understand this? No, you don't, you're not right. But being able to stay calm, and when somebody makes a remark that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever because it's like non-apparent in the situation that you're dealing with, being able to kind of dummy it down, I say, not because they're stupid, but because they're not necessarily in that industry.
In a way they understand.
Right? Hence why they're hiring you, right? So to kind of be able to bring it down to a level so that they can understand, it empowers them, right? And can you kind of talk a little bit about empowering your customers, empowering your clients to be able to feel confident in you, in the deal that they're given, and in the future that you're helping them achieve?
So that's a great question.
Thank you.
And so I think it gets back to our conversation a little bit earlier where we were talking about asking questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The other component to that is trying to understand what your clients' preferences are.
Right.
You may be an analytical person where you want all kinds of numbers thrown at you. That's the way you process information. You might also be an individual who potentially just wants to know the Coles notes, like, you know, like package it up for me, give it to me in a way that I can digest it. And if it sounds reasonable, I'm going to go for it. Okay.
Yep.
Or I might be a person who's rah rah sis boom bah. As long as everyone's having fun, honestly, it's really irrelevant. I don't care about the details. I trust you, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be able to understand, you know, your audience, that person. How do they want information delivered to them, and can I adjust, you know, my delivery so that I'm satisfying what their expectations are? Okay?
Right.
So I think that's a really important skill set to understand. And that so you're then giving them the information that they can digest and make an informed decision and be happy.
I couldn't agree more, Steve. Honestly, it was really well said, truly.
Did I answer your question there?
Yes, you did. 100%.
There's so much there to unpack. Right?
Yeah. No, 100%. Now, let's move on a little bit from that topic of clients, customer relations. Let's talk. I think we only got maybe like 5 more minutes.
Sure.
So let's go over your networking. So, Steve, you got into the industry pretty late. Now, that may have helped with the people that you know because you were older. You were 49-ish, 50, around there. So you probably knew some people that you've got, hey, man, hey, Jimmy, I just became a mortgage agent. Hey, why don't we sit down and have a chat? But getting clients that you didn't know, you were very experienced in that realm. So could you shed a light on how did you get clients? How did you network? How did you build those relationships coming into the industry as a very professional person already off the bat? Because, somebody might be 22 years old listening to this podcast and wondering they want to they want to be a mortgage agent, and they're looking for somebody like you who's been doing it for a very long time and been in the relationship building area to help them build that client base. Perfect. So could you shed a light on that?
Yeah. So I think this is a great question. And I think this is a great question that is relevant no matter what your age is.
That's so true.
When you're getting into a space that's new, that is 100% commission, you don't have a paycheck coming every 2 weeks, okay?
Yep.
And I think what happens is that a lot of people gravitate towards friends and family, but my observation experience has been that when you're new to a space and you're relying on friends and family, and then you find out that your sister got a mortgage with, a chartered bank and didn't use you're asking yourself, well, like they know what I'm doing for a living. How come they didn't, use my services? And I think that really talks to the fact that it takes a while for people to understand that you're now in it to win it, that you're competent in the space, and this isn't something that you're just trying on, okay?
Yeah,
and when it comes to financial information and your credit bureau, your credit history, you're really bearing your soul on the line with that person you're having a conversation with.
Right.
Especially when it comes to friends and family, people might not be so forthcoming to have that conversation and to admit that maybe there was a period in their life where they didn't do so great when it came to managing their credit. That's a really hard conversation to have. As an individual, have you even reconciled that? Have you made amends at trying to be able to improve your own situation? And then for me to come to you to be able to bear my soul and say, hey, I screwed up. This is, so I think it takes a while for people to be able to say, Steve's not going nowhere. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think that those transactions happen as a result of, just time. Okay.
Interesting. So letting time kind of play its course in terms of building relationships with people outside of, family, friends, that kind of thing.
You hit the nail on the head. Okay. So this industry and many industries are all about relationships. 100% about relationships. You need to know, like, and trust me. We need to make sure that we are on the same page. I need to resonate with you so that when you take a look at me, either through a podcast or my social media presence, or even just picking up a phone, it has to be congruent with who you are as an individual. If I represent myself in the mortgage space as blue pinstripe suit, et cetera, and then you have a conversation with me and you're like, hey, that dude totally is not blue pinstripe suit. There's a disconnect because I responded to that advertisement as a result of that image, that representation. So I expected something. And when they talk to me and they find that's not me, well, then I've done myself a disservice. There's a disconnect on who I am as an individual. I want to represent and attract people who like the way that my mindset is, the way that I speak, the information I'm delivering to, all that stuff. Because then there's a congruency with that. And what happens there is that you're more aligned to do business with me because we have rapport.
Interesting.
So I think it's very important to represent yourself as an individual as to who you authentically are as an individual.
Wow. That was very well said. You know what, to be honest with you, to break that down in what I kind of heard, give yourself time, especially if you're young, to build those relationships, to build those relationships and ultimately, get new clients because it's not going to come right off the bat, right? It's not. It just won't. So you got to be patient. You got to give yourself time. And then on top of that, being the real you. right? So being the person that you want to be, whatever that looks like, and you know what? People are going to gravitate towards it because you're open to being the real you. You're not fake. You're not phony, right?
And I think it's reasonable also we all change as individuals.
Yes.
So it's fine that you are evolving who you are as an individual in a professional space, et cetera, et cetera. Just make sure the message you're delivering aligns with who you are right now.
So true.
Right?
So true.
And it's fine to grow. There's nothing the matter with that.
Yeah.
You know? Doesn't mean I couldn't evolve if I chose to evolve into the blue pinstripe persona.
Yep.
That's just not me as an individual. But doesn't mean that maybe that's where I want to get to.
Yeah, yeah.
Make sure that your branding, your story, everything that your messaging is aligned. And I think it's also important to make sure that you are a member of a community. So what that means is that, we talked a little bit about earlier about the fact that Niagara is kind of small market compared to GTA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And word travels very fast. Okay. So you want to make sure that you are above reproach, you're credible, et cetera. And there's a lot of really great networking opportunities. I know networking sounds salesy.
Yeah.
But I think it's an opportunity to build relationships. You're not going to be that person, at least I never was, that felt like I need to hand out cards to everyone that I met.
Yes, that's so true.
That becomes diluted.
Yep.
If you can go into a situation, you can make one or two really great connections. Awesome.
Yep.
So that's kind of where the long game kind of comes in, because you can't just dump on 50 people at a Chamber of Commerce event and expect to get business. It's not going to happen. Relationship building. And when you think about it, how many relationships can you truly develop and cultivate that are meaningful? The number's not 50.
Right, exactly.
That's way too high maintenance. That's way too high maintenance.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So you need to make sure that you are picking a level, say maybe exactly 10 people, maybe a couple of real estate agents, a couple of financial planners, a couple of insurance people, a couple of real estate lawyers. So break down that 10 and now focus on making those relationships awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Steve, you absolutely killed this, man. When you said you did this again, you did this before, I was like, okay, yeah. And then hearing you talk, it's like,
I appreciate
thank you so much for coming on. All right, well, listen, we're out of time basically. Awesome. But Steve, you covered so much. And, to anybody getting in the mortgage space, or anything, what you want to contact Steve. Steve, can you just give us a contact or something to reach out?
Just reach out to my website, themortgageguy.niagara.com. There's a contact me form there. You can book an appointment type thing. Happy to spend time with anyone, even if you're not in the mortgage broker space. Love to talk about social media and networking, ways to be able to, grow your business. And I think it's super important that, I can learn so much more from people who are not in my space.
Yes.
Maybe there's a better way to do things, and maybe I just haven't thought about it yet.
Yeah.
Or my industry hasn't approached it like that yet, right?
100%, Steve. So we'll make sure to link that in the bio there. Yeah. The Mortgage Guy. You can find him on Instagram. I love The Mortgage Guy. It's such a good brand name. So thank you so much, Steve. And to anybody listening, thank you. And that's a wrap, guys. We'll see you later. Thank you for listening to this week's Golden Guest on the Meeting Gold podcast. If you learned something from today's episode, make sure to check out our other content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, make sure to leave us a follow while you're there. Thanks, and have a golden day.